Hello. It is time for the live drawing party. And I'm Danny Gregory, and it is April 9th. And here I am. So um, it is a pleasure to be here with you. And it is so nice to be thinking about what matters. That's what I've been thinking about today. What is important? Um, and I think the reason that I've been thinking about that is because I'm drinking Diet Coke. Not the kind of thing I drink a lot of. Not a sponsor. I'm drinking Diet Coke because we have no coffee. We have no tea, at least here. We'll probably be getting some eventually. But a day without coffee, a day without tea, doesn't seem right. But one could do without it. And I think that this whole experience has been thinking about what really matters. Not what you can do without, because there's always deprivation and privation, but what about what really is important? And where are you focusing your time and energy now? Now that really nobody is deciding for you. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was saying to them, so often when people first start to draw and they go out to draw in public, they are super anxious about what other people are going to think about them, and are gonna think that they're posing as artists, or are going to stare over their shoulder and look at their work and say, like, really, you're an artist, or if you think you are. And that anxiety about what other people think is so can be so overwhelming that you don't even actually go and do it. And I think it can even be bigger. I think there are times where you can say, I don't even think that I can pick up a pencil and draw anything at all because I'm going to be bad at it. So it doesn't even matter what other people think. It's what I think. Has that changed for you in the last few weeks? Have you started to say to yourself, I'm going to focus on what matters to me. I'm going to focus on the things that I want, what I want to do. Um, because has your relationship with with yourself changed in this time? That's what I would like to know. Um, we talk about all this. You guys are talking about scarcity, but what are there things that there are perhaps more of an abundance of right now? Friendship, maybe, connection, time to just examine what matters. There's an abundance of, I don't know, time spent watching Netflix, maybe. What, how have all these things changed for you? And are there things that are truly significant in your reassessments where you've said to yourself, you know what, I'm realizing that spending half an hour to draw with this guy on YouTube is something that matters to me. Not the guy on YouTube part of it, but the drawing. Or maybe reading a book, or maybe meditation, um, cooking. We've had one meal that we ordered in from a restaurant in the last month. Other than that, we've been cooking a lot. Much more. As New Yorkers, you're always eating out, you're always ordering in, but now we're getting used to like making our own food. That's become more important to us. Um, I remember when we had the hurricane in New York, Hurricane Sandy, and our building, our entire neighborhood was without electricity for 10 days. And my wife and I would walk up and down 8 flights of stairs carrying our dogs several times a day to walk them. And then we would walk to work in another part of the city that had electricity. And then we would come back to our dark neighborhood. And we were spending the evenings playing cards, um, eating my candlelight, going to bed early, getting up early. It just there were I don't know, there were positives to it. And there were realizations and revelations of being forced to make decisions about what matters. So I just wonder if that's true of what's happening to you. So let me just see if any of you posted anything like that. Lenore is definitely giving herself permission to spend more time drawing. I think that that's really great. Permission, right, being the optimal thing. This is your time to do stuff, who else here? Life is too short to worry about such things. Are we thinking about the length of our lives now more? I mean, that's certainly something that we do as we get older. We think about how much time we have left. Hopefully, we're not thinking about those things overwhelmingly, but we are assessing what's important and what's valuable. So yesterday, unfortunately, I discovered that one of the things that really matters to me, well, I kind of knew it, but what really matters to me is the internet and having internet service. And unfortunately, my internet service was being upgraded behind the scenes as we were in the middle of doing yesterday's party, and we got disconnected. But I was in the middle of sharing with you a video that I want to go back and show with you again because it got cut off in the middle. It was a conversation that I was having with my friend Lapin in Barcelona. Lapin is a French artist, illustrator, designer, urban sketcher. And we were talking about how being an urban sketcher is different when you're in quarantine, and how he has developed a whole new thing that he wants to draw, which is the succulent plants that are on his balcony in Barcelona. So let's go over and have a look at that conversation.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on. I studied that one today. Um, that's a good way to forget about everything. Just relax.
You have a lot of plants on your roof, do you?
I do about 150, so it's full of it around here and behind. So yeah, hundreds of species, and so I think I could manage to stay a couple of more months if it's needed. Hopefully not.
Well, the good thing about plants is they change. Unlike buildings, they
Yeah,
change, so you could always go back and draw them all again, and they'll be different.
and even turning it a bit, it's a totally different landscape. It's what I like about it. I'm thinking about the one I'm doing right now, Ionium, that I may just only sketch that plan on this drawing, but from a different perspective, so it will totally fill the page. I think it could be interesting.
Yeah, they're not sketchbook drawings. You're really drawing them on sheets of paper too, on an easel. I
Yeah,
see it. That's different
that's
too.
a big paper I ordered just before the quarantine. Uh, I'm very glad I get that at home. Usually I would have been very impressed, intimidated by such a good quality paper, because it's a Fabriano, very heavy, 300 grams. But it's, wow, so nice for the color. I enjoy it a lot.
So this might change your art. You might emerge from this with a different kind of art.
Definitely, I'm sure. Yeah. I know that I wanted to sketch my plants for a long time. I already did a lot of small drawings in my regular sketchbooks, but it kept nothing to do. You know how big or how small are my sketchbooks, and now it's just spending times. I spend 3-4 days on each drawing. So
Really, that's fantastic. I know. It's how bad is Barcelona?
actually, it seems to get better. It's getting better for the last 3 days. And it's quite significant now, about 30% less deaths every day. So hopefully it's the confinement is working well, but they already pushed the deadline for until the 26th of April. So we still have to wait at least 20 days. It will be hard for many people. We are lucky that we have a big apartment. Louise is fantastic. We are protecting her a lot. We are not turning on the TV, just reading the newspaper, and so she's not totally. She knows what's happening, but not the scale and totally how it goes. You only get out once. Kids are not to get out during the quarantine. It's very strict here, so we get out once a week.
Once a week
Yeah,
only, yeah. I guess you've drawn the view from your roof already. You've drawn the landscape many times, probably, right?
I not that often. I've got a huge and perhaps too intimidating view. It's wow. It's 180 degrees from the Sagrada Familia on one side and the sea on the other with the Olympic Tower. I'm watching it every day and I love to contemplate it, but it's super hard to start drawing it. I'm sure I will have time to do one of those big drawings also during these days. But no, I decided not to sketch my interior. I saw many drawings on the first week of people sketching their toilets and kitchen and bathroom, everything, tables. I do not feel comfortable with that, and if I have done it, I would have finished after 3 days. So it was not a real
project, yeah.
yeah. So that's why I was looking for something much more easygoing. Yeah, just slow down, taking as much time as possible, and to disconnect. It's very meditating, this way of drawing. It already is when I'm sketching in my sketchbooks, but on this large scale and especially some botanical illustration is wow, super. I feel very good about it.
So, I mean, I remember when you drew the whole skyline of New York. I mean, the whole, when you were visiting us a few months ago and you drew the whole view. So I can imagine that you could do it, but I also understand why you don't want to. It's the nice thing about drawing a plant is you can draw a small part of it and then you can decide to keep going and drawing more, right? It's kind of up to you to decide.
I could stop after a couple of blocks if I'd like to, but yeah, I can give you a quick
show me
view on the city, because I get over there. You can perhaps see the Sagrada Familia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And just in front is a Gothic district, the Old City, and the Montjuic, which is on the sea. And over there are the beaches, and you get the two Olympic Tower. So that's quite a big.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Stick to plants, I think. Yeah.
yeah. No, this is quite inspiring already. So let's see. When I will sketch all the foreground, I would perhaps go for the background.
And what about? Is it changing your watercolors also because you're now using a different kind of paper and?
It is, yeah. Also green. It's a color that is very difficult to use actually. And I was already giving some advice to my students to not use to never use their green from the watercolor.
The one that comes in the box. You have to mix your own. Yeah.
But yeah, to create green with blue with yellow ochre, and to make your own even with alizarin crimson, and that's what I'm doing also here, and it's. Yeah, if the mood is greenish kind of, but it's mostly blue and yellow and purple. That's what I like about it, and especially with succulents, all these plants get some crazy colors.
Yeah, a lot of your plants seem to be succulents. You have some cactuses there.
Mm-hmm.
And they all grow outside. So Barcelona, the winters are not very hard then, huh?
No, it's for the last 14 years. I think we had 3-4 times snow, so that's very, very cool here. Yeah. And super hot during the summer, so you need some very resistant plants. We can't have any aromatics or tomatoes, so we'll never make it on the terrace.
Right. Good. Well, stay safe.
Thanks. You too.
Keep drawing beautiful plants. That's such a nice project to be doing. And I'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye then. Bye.
Bye.
Lapin in Barcelona. These are some of the drawings that he's doing. What do you think? Let's have a look at another one. So that's what I was thinking we would draw today. Perhaps not as ambitious as some of his are, but just if you have a plant, bring it over or go and sit by it If you don't have a plant, find something else that feels contemplative, contemplation worthy. Some people have mentioned that they have no plants in their house because their cats are eating them. We'll draw some part of your cat then. But the idea is really like, let's slow down, let's look at some organic shapes, and let's just see where they take us, whether they are worthy of thinking about. I love this conversation that you guys have been having here in the comments about all the things that are becoming priorities for you: reading books, baking bread. Um, uh, what else do we have here? There's a lot of bread discussions, cooking discussions, um, and drawing a lot, of course. That's great. And sewing, hopefully not just making face masks, but doing something else nice with it. Knitting, I know, is a thing. I was talking to my mom yesterday, who's been doing quite a lot of knitting. Um, so, yeah, let's all do something slow and contemplative. Let me just get over and get the old iPad out because I'm going to draw on the iPad today because I like to, but also because it is simple and immediate. Don't worry about how I'm doing it. Don't feel like you have to do it that way too. But look at this. This is what I'm going to draw. It is this giant orchid plant sitting here, and it is beautiful. And I guess you could draw it too, but why? Why not draw something of your own? Or draw. Just draw. You could draw some wood grain. You could draw your foot. Um, you could draw a handful of beans thrown on the counter. A couple weeks ago, we drew granola. You could draw anything that reminds you of the fact that we are all creatures on this planet. Something about contemplating nature it feels just right, It feels right because nature is specific but also individualized, right? Every leaf, every petal has some rules that it follows, but then it also has a lot of things that are unique to it. That's a nice thing to remind ourselves about, and I think it's an essential thing when you're drawing because when you draw something like a plant or a tree, it's easy to look for some kind of a shorthand, a language of how do I convert leaf shapes or petals into a single repeating code, Like we all have like that's a leaf. There you go, that's a leaf. But that's a leaf. It's not all leaves. And as in many things that we draw, the more we connect with their particularity, the more likely we are to have a satisfying drawing experience. We're not writing in repeating patterns and letters. We're responding and observing the specifics of what are there. I've talked about the alphabet of drawing, and it's true. You can bring the things that you're contemplating down to a code or to a shorthand of certain kinds of elements, shapes, curves, angles, straight lines, closed shapes, open shapes. You can develop a language like that that helps you when you're drawing to say to yourself, now what is that exactly? But in the end, all these natural elements are a unique combination of those elements, right? A leaf is made up of curves, but it's a specific kind of curve, and that curve changes from leaf to leaf, petal to petal. And so drawing, it's kind of thing I'm a little lost here. Here it is just a reminder of that. And it's an opportunity to slow down too, and to say, what are the elements that make up this thing? I'm going to follow Lapin's example, and one of the drawings that he shared. If you follow his Instagram, he's been posting not only the finished drawings, but also time-lapse videos, but also sometimes works in progress videos, so you can really see what he's doing. And generally, what he's doing is he starts by drawing the entire plant, hundreds of leaves, as just a plain contour drawing. And once he's completed that, then he goes back in and he starts to work with watercolors. And he has a pretty small watercolor set. I've seen he has a bunch of different ones, but the one that he carries with him a lot is really simple. Doesn't have a huge number of colors, but he is able to make lots and lots of colors out of them, of course. And I think what he was saying about greens is interesting. Greens are very complex and they have lots of different qualities to them. In fact, I remember when we did a class called Seeing. Some of you might remember that. It's actually a class you can sign up for at Sketchbook School. But that class has a lesson from Kathy Johnson, who is really a great nature artist as well as a great teacher. And she does an entire demo about mixing greens in watercolors and how to mix lots of different ones and how to sort of figure out lessons or principles behind mixings of greens so that you can go into, I mean, because obviously when you're painting a landscape or you're painting a naturescape, let's say, you'll end up with the need for so many greens, right? Because a tree is not one, even if it's one species of tree, it doesn't, each leaf, it may be a slightly different color and natively, but also it's lit differently. So that light is going to produce new greens, right? Dark greens, light greens, yellowish greens, reddish greens. It just goes on and on and on. So knowing how to do that means that you'll end up with a more satisfying painting, certainly, more satisfying image, but also I think you'll have yet another opportunity for contemplation, right? Which is to say, I need to really understand what are the greens? What is making up this plant? Not just contoured shapes, but also an infinite number of variations of hues and tones, and you know, there's just so many things that are going on in there. I don't know if you saw a film that I made a couple months ago. It seems like forever ago, but I went to visit my mother in her house in Long Island, and she was talking. The film was basically about the art that she makes. She started making art. I mean, when was it? 20 years ago, maybe. Which she calls leafages. And what she does is she gets leaves She presses them, and she combines them with calligraphy. She has beautiful, beautiful writing, and she takes poems or prayers or different things, and she combines them with these various leaves, and she collects leaves from all around the world, and she makes almost collages out of them. So I'll show you that video sometime. I think it's on our channel somewhere. So yeah, so a few of you remember it. That's good. So what else? I'm wondering what to do with this. I'm sort of, this shape continues up here, but I don't know if that's what I want to do. I think I might want to think about adding color to this, because the pink of this orchid is just insane and overwhelming. So I might just play around with that now and just say, like, well, what could I do with it? Could I do that? Could I just add a colored background and see if I like that? Maybe. Let's start there. So I'm going to add a colored background. Now I'm going to mix some pinks to go in here. You know, I don't get to draw nature as much as I think I should. And by should, I don't mean like I'm obliged to do it, but it's actually something I really like. Living all these years that I have in New York, in the middle of New York City, nature is around. I mean, I'm constantly aware of birds, and when I look out my window, there are all these trees below, and I live not far from Washington Square Park, and there are leaves and plants and all kinds of stuff there. We even have some red-tailed hawks, but I'm not really in it. I'm much more in it right now, being here in Arizona, sitting by this garden, and that's really nice. But I grew up with my grandparents, and my grandmother, I've talked about her before because she was really an important and influential person for me. And my grandmother had an amazing green thumb, and she loved plants and flowers, and she taught me a lot about them. And my mother is also somebody who is a great gardener, and she has a beautiful garden where she lives. But for all these years, I hadn't had that, and it's just so nice. Something about being in nature that I just find incredibly valuable. It sounds odd and a cliche, and something that I guess only somebody who is an urban dweller would think that it's some kind of revelation. Obviously, it's important, but watching birds is so interesting to me, and there are lots of them out today. We saw the family of quails trotting around. They were doing various important things. The birds they're social animals. They're beautiful. They're very territorial. Last night we watched this amazing thing. So there was a quail sitting on a tree over there, and this quail would, every few minutes, it would make one noise, like, bah! You can hear it now. Anyway, it would make this noise, bah! There, it just did it. And then far off, there was another quail that would respond with the same note. So they would go back and forth. Quail, 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 quail. It just went on for a really long time until one of the quails suddenly flew away, and then the other one kept saying quail, quail, and it didn't respond. And then finally, the first quail landed somewhere else and started saying the same thing, quail, quail. It was, I don't know, it was very touching. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, what's the deal, quail? What do you want? Yeah, so nature is just, it's just endlessly interesting. It's like stories that are being told by these creatures out there. I just love that. So I would say a newly renewed appreciation for nature is definitely one of the discoveries that I've made. You know, it's just interesting to know that that's something that matters to me. But this doesn't really look like Lapin's thing at all, does it? No, but it looks like me. It's quite nice looking, I think. Um, Julie says, I think there are chapters in life where we slow down enough to see the gifts of nature. Maybe that's what it is. You're right. Maybe that's what it is. Because it is possible to live in a city and never even notice that your neighbors are animals and they're all over the place. But you have your head down and you are, zooming along, doing your thing. You didn't even pay attention to them. And then suddenly you have to stop. We were doing a thing yesterday. We were trying to say, how many bird sounds could we hear right now? Slow down and say, I think Jenny identified, 7 that were happening simultaneously. So, yes. So, Chuck, I am using Procreate, but I'm just using it because I don't have any other art supplies. That's not really the only reason I'm using it, but yeah. Thank God for Procreate because it is. If you have to, if you have to be without anything, but if you can only have a desert island tool, boy, give me this. Absolutely. So Grace points out that nature in Arizona includes snakes and scorpions. It's true, and mosquitoes. They're the most relevant monsters as far as I'm concerned. Incessant. I have enjoyed their attention regularly since coming here, but small price to pay for being in nature. So, how have you interpreted nature on this thing? Renata says the birds are so loud around my house in Houston. It seems like they are yelling at each other. They are yelling at each other, yelling at each other, to each other, about each other. Yeah, it's constant. They probably say the same about us when we're walking down the street on the phone. But yeah, as I mentioned to you yesterday, it's like I woke up and I thought, uh-oh, are we, what if we're like completely overwhelmed by these birds? What if it's like impossible to do anything because of these crazy birds constantly screaming and shouting? But they are much more active first thing in the morning. And they sort of, you tend to kind of call less during the day. Um, but yeah, and at night they're all sleeping or they're quiet. was watching a mockingbird the other day. That is an amazingly hilarious creature. The mockingbird does so many different kinds of sounds, and they sound like things as well as just random stuff. So Thistle's drawing the first rose from my rose bush outside my window. So roses are coming in there, are they? Yes. There's some beautiful roses here, but it's very warm. So yes. Julie says, one thing I've done during the stay at home bliss, okay, bliss, is take long walks by the farm on the Colorado Front Range. So I was started with a farmhouse and a pine tree picture when I joined this. Oh, you already started with it. Okay. Yes, that's good. Julia and Audrey say, being in quarantine, all of my senses are heightened, especially sound. Is that out of concern? Are you on high alert, do you think? Or is it just that a lot of other sounds are gone? I mean, in New York, we live 2 blocks from a firehouse, and we would hear those ambulances and fire engines going at all times, and it was always jarring, to say the least, whenever they would go by. All right, I should probably stop this because I'm going to start to overdo it. I can feel it already coming on. But there you have it. It's my offering for today. Darren says, you know that thing when old people say they had a lovely war? I now understand that. I have heard that phrase, and I was thinking about that today too. Like, is this like wartime? And is it, I mean, World War II went on for 5 years, 4 years, 4 or 5 years. Civil War went on for 5 years. World War One. I mean, people lived under these kinds of conditions for years. Hopefully, we're not going to be, and hopefully, this is different. But yeah, I mean, we're not used to it. Our generation, we're not used to it. So yeah, um, we're not used to deprivation. We're not used to. I mean, we're used to stress and anxiety, I guess. But anyway, it is a movie, Oh, What a Lovely War, starring John Lennon. That's what I always think of when I hear that movie, John Lennon. So, Steve thinks my drawing would look great hung on the wall. I never really hang my drawings anywhere. I hang them. They sit in sketchbooks. They sit on my iPad. That's it. But well, Grace talks about, yes, a whole generation was changed by the Depression. It's true. It's true. And I think we've all been a little insensitive to that, you know? You see older people and you go, oh, they have canned goods in the basement, or they're hoarding plastic bags. And you think, yeah, like we just cleaned out my mother-in-law's house a couple months ago, and it's like, what? Why are you keeping all this stuff? But you know, she was born at a time when you didn't have all that stuff. She grew up also during World War II, and she was a little girl on Pearl Harbor Day. She was telling me her memories of Pearl Harbor Day, and it's like those things formed her. And we think of 9/11 as forming us, possibly, but this is probably going to be even more so. I mean, I saw somebody said that we may never shake hands again. Not sure that's an enormous loss. What will replace it? Will it be a lot of this and sort of maybe it'll be just like sending each other, yeah, fist bumps? I don't know. But maybe the point isn't that it's a loss of important things, but maybe it's a paring down. And that's kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of this whole thing, which is deciding what matters, deciding what you really care about. And also, I think, and you know, I don't want to preach about this, but I feel like we do a lot of times decide that or feel that acquiring things is a way to deal with the emptiness we feel. But maybe we are empty and we can't fill those things up with trips to Costco. But that we have to go in and say, maybe being empty is okay. Maybe there's some room in there to fill with new and beautiful things and new and beautiful habits and more important ideas. Maybe instead of going to Costco, we need to go to the library. Maybe instead of watching reality TV, we should read a poem or watch a sunset or listen to a bird. Maybe. I don't know. Have we reached that point? Or are we just simply experiencing it and saying, you know what? Human beings for thousands of years have recognized the value and pleasure in these things, and somehow we've lost it because we're buried, right? And that's what drawing has taught me. It's a lesson I need to constantly relearn, but drawing has taught me the importance of being present and trying to find beauty around you. If you develop the skills to find beauty around you, you will always be surrounded by beauty, right? You'll never be at a loss. You will never be bored. You will never be lonely. It's all there all the time. You just didn't notice it. I've noticed it in a garbage can. I've noticed it in a crumpled up piece of newspaper. In an old pair of shoes, Van Gogh noticed it. The Japanese call it wabi-sabi. It's everywhere around us. Beauty and interesting things to observe and connect with that will remind us of what matters to us, remind us of our place in the universe. Looking up at stars, watching the seasons change, watching the light move. It's happening all around us, and yet we've become anesthetized to it because we're distracted all the time. So there we have it. That's my thought for the day. And from a lot of days, there are times that I forget this. God, I forget it a lot. And then I feel that sense in myself, that this sense of dissatisfaction, looking around for something else. But it's hard because you have to stop. You have to stop the wheels turning in your head. You have to stop the world whirring past you. You have to slow down and you have to say, okay, what is going on? Like, what is there here? I mean, this orchid, it's obviously a phenomenal, beautiful thing, but, so is this can. So there's the light reflections in it. If I crushed it, which I can't because there's still some coke in it, if I crushed it, it would be a whole other thing. It's like what Lapin was saying in that interview. He said that when you rotate a plant, it becomes a whole new landscape. So one plant, a plant that's growing and changing, you could draw it every day, rotate it, draw it again the next day, draw it the next day. It would change. It would be endless. It would be an endless subject. And at first it would seem like a plant, but after a while it would seem like an endless landscape full of adventure and beauty and possibility. You just need to explore it. You can't go like, yeah, I've been there. I'm not that good at drawing plants. Meh, plants, meh. I don't really need a drawing of plants. Push all that away and say, I don't actually need a pen to draw a plant or a pencil or an iPad. I don't really need any of that. I just need my eyes and my brain. And I can trace the edges of the shapes of the plant with my brain. And I can have a large part of the pleasure, the meditative pleasure of drawing, just simply by contemplation, by slowly traveling around this plant and looking at every crevice, every twist and turn and saying to myself, there's there. I'm here now in this moment. I'm communing with this plant, but also, what's the point? You may be saying to yourself, what is the point? What's the end goal? You always want to know, what's the KPI? What's the objective? It's to just be. Dogs know it, cats know it, birds know it. Just be. And when you're present, a lot of the things that you worry about go away. Just be. Yeah. Slow down. You can speed up, but then slow down. If you're speeding up all the time, it doesn't seem like you're speeding up anymore. And then what? Where do you go? You've dulled your senses, and there's nowhere to go. You're not seeing anything. Everything's a warp going past you. And then suddenly something happens like what we're going through now, where the brakes get slammed on, and you get smashed up against the windscreen, and you're completely disoriented, and you have no resources to deal with what's happening because you're so used to that speed. But if you're going at a slower pace, if you're stopping and seeing what's around you, you might notice calamity before it hits because you're paying attention. I don't know. There's all kinds of things that are interesting about drawing that go beyond whether or not you hang it on the wall or whether or not you're using Procreate, but are about the feelings and the value that it gives you, the being in the moment. That's my thought for today. Tomorrow, we'll think about something else. Tomorrow is going to be, I think tomorrow we're going to do self-portraits again. We did it last Friday. I think it's something that it's time to do again. It's been a week of change. My hair's gotten longer. Let's see where we go with it. Let's try it again. Let's draw again with each other tomorrow. Have a different kind of party. What do you think about what kinds of parties these are? Are they like bacchanalias, or are they sort of civilized dinner parties, cocktail parties, office parties, political parties? They're not political parties. What kinds of parties are we having here in our live drawing party? Maybe we are the drawing party, and we can put together our platform sometime in the future. Today, thank you for joining me today later. I didn't even mention that. Today, various things happened, and I've been trying to be absolutely rigid about showing up here at noon Eastern Standard Time every day. Today, it moved an hour, and I really appreciate you showing up nonetheless. Tomorrow, we'll be back to our regular bat time, regular bat channel, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, whatever time it is your time, and we will work together then. Have fun together, party together. Okay. In the meantime, have a nice day. I'll see you tomorrow.